Welcome to the Chosen series. As always, my name is James from the Nerdy Bible, and with me tonight, our friend Mike from Showboys Media. How you doing, man?
Good, good. How are you? How are you?
Good. You have to think about that for a moment.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
as always, he's right. His name is always James,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I was just like,
Yes.
really?
No
I was,
Jimmy.
yeah, that's true.
Um,
I might start calling you that though. But I'm
nah,
doing well. How are
I
you?
don't. No, I'm probably gonna delete everything that you do with that. No, good man. I'm great. So yeah, it's tonight we're doing season 3, episode 6. How does it
Yes.
feel to be this far into the show? Um,
Uh, Pretty good. So we've been recording like currently caught up to date for like what, 3 episodes,
yeah,
3 or 4 episodes,
correct.
and just getting to that point felt like a huge milestone to finally like get caught up
Mhm.
with all the past seasons and then like um the start of season 3. But it like I feel like we just got caught up and we're like 2 episodes away from being done. It's crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we're like 24 podcast episodes in, which is crazy
Somewhere around there, yeah.
because I think they say you need 10,000 hours to be a master at something. And so I think we've already mastered, this podcast. I think we're at about 10,000 hours of content here
Yeah,
that
just
we've
about.
had for
Give or take
24
a
podcast
minute or two.
episodes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very close.
But yeah, it's crazy. We have 2 more episodes, and the release dates were announced
Mhm.
last night,
Yes.
which we were so close. I was so close to being right. Um, we almost got the season 3 release like straight weekly.
Yeah.
But
I knew it wasn't going to happen.
yeah, we have a couple week break. What is it, like 2 weeks? I guess maybe 3.
On
2 weeks, I
your
think.
end, you have a 2-3 break. Mine, we're going to go flow straight through it. So we're
Yeah,
all
yeah. No, I
good.
mean like currently the way that
Yes.
the show is being released as of today, which is what, the 16th. I think we have two weeks off, and then episode 7 also a big announcement. They're revisiting theaters here for episode 7 and 8. They will have a theatrical run, which I think is cool. But most excitingly, for those who are not interested in going to the theater or can't or whatever, the theatrical run of episode 7 and 8 will not impact or delay the release of 7 and 8 on streaming. Those will come as scheduled, February 5th, right?
Yes,
And the
February
12th?
5th and the 7th, actually.
The 7th. Oh,
Yes, 2 days later. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I see why you were asking me
Yes.
that before we started going. Okay.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So my answer still remains, unless we can unless some other day works. But yeah. So you got a 2 week break here. Well, past you had a 2 week break. And the final 2 episodes coming within 3 days. That's kind of cool.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then we got playing the waiting game, which I don't, I like that it's not a whole. I don't think it'd be a whole year. I think it's,
Yeah.
so we'll be good there. But yeah, man,
I
this is
also feel like we've had this conversation before,
what?
but it was like when we announced the announcement of the season premiere being in theaters, and then it being a waiting game for when it would hit streaming.
Well,
yeah,
but
it felt that conversation felt oddly familiar.
but I would say this time it's I don't think they've probably even started filming season 4. If they have, it's been like I wouldn't buy it. I don't think they are. I don't even know if they're funded for season 4 yet. I mean, I imagine there's a little bit of break. Well, I mean, he said in the live stream that the episodes are not done, but I imagine I think there've been recorded. All of the
7 and 8
pieces are there. Yeah. They just have to post production.
I looked at. I quickly Googled. You probably heard the clickety clacking of my keyboard. But director revealed that they're planning to release one season per year, and season 4 is hopefully supposed to be begin filming in early 2023, right after finishing season 3 shooting. So, if production and filming has not started on season 4 yet, the goal is early 2023. So, I would say within the next couple months. So, it's the way they do things with not like we just see right here and we've seen in the past, not having every episode of the season fully completed by the time they decide to launch said season. I wouldn't be surprised get season 4 starting at the end of the year 2023.
Oh, you think that late? I think we'll start seeing episodes like you may see something somewhere in fall, I would say. We'll see an episode at least. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but I would be shocked if we didn't get season 4 until 2024. That would be shocking. I'd say
Oh, I doubt
definitely
it.
last quarter of the year, fall sounds right, or close to Thanksgiving, Christmassy, that time frame. That's all very plausible, especially with the way that they do things here. But exciting news nonetheless. But let's crack into episode 6 here. Intensity. I gotta say, terrible name. That's an awful name for an episode.
Yeah. Well, we'll just move past that. So why don't you read our plagiarized
yes
introduction?
This was totally not copied right off of the streaming platform. But 2 disciples of John the Baptist come to Capernaum with a question for Jesus. It's very succinct episode description.
I don't understand what's up with these short episodes. Are we gonna get one that's gonna be like Jesus wept? It's like over, and you're like, okay.
Yes. In this week's episode, things
occurred.
Yes, show. Yeah, the early season episodes of the podcast, we had the benefit of recording them years after release. So I was looking on the wiki page. So someone typed up a really nice, maybe too long of a paragraph describing each episode. But yeah, a lot more happens than just these 2 disciples from John the Baptizer.
Yeah.
It's a good episode overall. Like, what'd you think?
No, I was, I need to stop going into things with expectations. I thought it was a great episode. I really like the intro, and we'll get into that in a moment. But I would say, a few things happened that I was happy to finally start introducing a person. We'll get there. But I would say, I don't know. It wasn't like I kept on seeing things, making this like larger anticipation for the episode, and it wasn't I don't know. It wasn't like this emotional roller coaster. Like the past 2 episodes were pretty intense, I would say.
Yes.
In regards to this series. And so this one was not, maybe for me, I don't know. Was it for you? Or did you?
It was like aggressively
wait.
mediocre.
Well, how many scrolls? Or did we do that?
How many scrolls? Out of 7, because that's the holy number.
Well,
I give it like a 5 out of 7. It's good.
That's fair.
It was good, but you're right. The chosen social media too. The last several weeks has been doing a good job of hyping up their episodes by posting people's comments of early screenings, and
this said it was intense, and I was like, well, I guess, but no, I don't know. There's a few intense parts, but not. Yeah,
It wasn't. Yeah, it was good, but it
Yeah.
wasn't. Yeah, after coming off the back of the last two episodes, obviously those are going to be kind of hard to follow up on, but some cool things did happen here.
But you need this kind of thing to I guess that's what you need, this type of story. The last two were kind of up the hill. This is a little
Mhm,
swoop, that little little swoop, and hopefully it goes up to this hill of season or episode 7 and 8,
mhm.
I mean, most shows I would say season 6 or episode 6, I mean, is like this, I don't know. I guess
Have
depending on what.
a little lull before the penultimate in the
Yeah,
season
correct.
finale
Yeah.
usually.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, because if you just continue to have an upward trajectory and intensity, and
Mhm.
yeah, by the time you get to the finale, um,
Mhm.
maybe wouldn't be as enjoyable because you'll just be so tense for like half the season. You're like, oh, this is so stressful watching the last 5 episodes. But um, yeah, it's a pattern that you typically will see.
Yep.
Um, yeah, even though we thought it was a good borderline great, I still wouldn't say that. I'd say it was just a good episode.
Yep.
But there were some good things, some important things happen within the group. I did think, like you said, the intro was really cool.
Mhm.
Um, and we get introduced to a pretty pivotal character. Um, and I thought the events that happen at the not the very end of the episode, while that was actually intense. Um, what happens with Barnaby and Shula was really cool. And upon my rewatch, so I watched just live on Sunday nights with my wife, and then before we record, I'll come down to the computer, an hour before we record, and rewatch it again.
What an overachiever. I did not watch it twice.
No, I got to do it so it stays fresh. But like, yeah, second rewatch. I got one of those pesky tear duct puncher moments there with
The
Shula and
second time?
Barnaby. Yeah, I don't.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
like,
I know. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
no, no,
off
no.
there. Yeah,
I
no,
didn't have anything else to say.
no, that was a good scene. We'll get there. We'll get there. Um, yeah, let's just jump into this. Let's jump in to today's episode. That's how I always end my
Yeah.
podcast intros. If you're listening, if you know, right?
If you know, you know.
Um, so the intro, man, I thought they did very good. So like it's it reminded me of like this like spooky they got if you have you ever watched Lord of the Rings?
Mhm.
You know that when they go in and sorry if this is a spoiler alert, but like this has been around for a
Yeah.
long time, so
It's
deal
if
with
we
it.
spoil Lord of the Rings, that's on you.
Yeah.
At this point, that's on you.
It reminded me of the when they go into the in the
The
third
mount,
movie when
yeah.
mountain and they get the why can't I think of what they're
Army
called?
of the Dead. I don't
Army of the
remember what
Dead,
they're
thank
called,
you.
but
Yeah,
yes.
no, I think that's what they're called.
Oh,
But
nice.
yeah, it reminds me of that. I don't know why I get that feeling. It's eerie music,
Definitely the color palette is like straight up the
Yeah,
the color of
no,
the
that's
army that they
probably what it is.
recruit there.
But it's this everyone's sleeping in camp and you're getting this perception of this of what's going on from this low view, like something that's moving across the
Yeah.
ground. And about halfway through,
Could even
you see
argue
exactly,
slithering across the ground. I don't know.
yes, you see exactly what it is. And the people that are sleeping there are the disciples. And so it's you get glimpses, I think Andrew, Simon Peter, all these people, and then here in the middle spaced out is Jesus, kind of on his knees praying, or what, I don't, I can only assume he is, and the snake is creeping up
Mhm.
on him, and he hits the ground, and he looks behind him and sees the snake, and then boom.
Yeah. the episode's over. And it was
Yeah.
no,
And that's why we were like, what is up with that?
yeah.
And so no, there and so now you see a woman
Excuse me.
jump up, from laying down, sitting up quickly, and she's clearly in Roman get up. She's wearing Roman
Mhm.
clothes in a very well off bedroom,
Mhm.
right? And so
Yep.
so I, at this point, did you know who
Uh,
this
I
was?
I did not know who it was, but this scene made me think
Yeah.
of when Jesus is tempted, right, out in the wilderness, because he has disciples and they, like, fall asleep, right? Isn't that isn't that or am I
Oh, yeah.
combining
No, no, no,
2
no, I think you're
2 moments?
combining 2. So I don't know if it's when he's out in the wilderness. Like, you mean right after he was baptized? Is that what you mean? Because that was
Yeah, I
before.
think I'm combining 2 because
Yeah,
I
you're
think when the disciples fall asleep is when he
it's
eventually gets arrested, right?
well, yeah, it's I think at that point, if I have it right, it's the um Gethsemane? The garden, right? And he's
Yeah,
going back and forth in the night, kind of like, Jesus,
yeah,
if you or no, jeez. God, if you would take this cup from me, like
yeah.
that type of thing. And so that's what you are mixing it up. But in the
Okay,
wilderness,
yeah.
he does, right after he's baptized by John the Baptist, he goes out in
Right.
the wilderness
Okay,
for
so
40
then
days. But
yeah,
he's
so
tempted
the
by
disciples
Satan
were
there,
there
right?
though. So, like, yeah, I don't think it's what I was thinking it was because since I was combining the 2, the disciples weren't there when he was tempted. So I was like, "Oh, maybe this is, like, a little glimpse of him being tempted," but, it could make more sense if this is the garden, right? The disciples are asleep, the snake creeping up, just being that metaphor of Satan and, like, you know, coming thinking that, he's about to win this victory, right? Because like you said, it's a dream, at least, in the episode, it's um, presented as such from this Roman woman who ends up being the wife of
Dun dun dun. A
Pontius
Pontius Pilate.
Pilate. Yes. So, you know, the man responsible for the crucifixion. Um, and if they didn't want to make it too obvious for us, um, about that tie, his wife goes out on the deck and is like, "Really, Pontius? Do you have to have 4 people being crucified at 7:30 a.m.? I'm trying to get some sleep here."
Oh,
Like,
it's
obviously,
just
she's
so
very disturbed by
normalized.
by that whole act of crucifixion, as one should be, because it's monstrous. But Pontius is played here very, very quippy and quick-witted and smart alecky, and he's like, well, and what time of day is what time of day is an ideal time to die? Like, really? I mean, but he does have a point.
Yeah, yeah. There's just so much to unpack back here. First off, um, so yes, no, the whole. So I think what they started off by doing is I know in Matthew, I was just looking up, I couldn't remember where it was. Matthew 27 um, um, talks about that. It was when Jesus was already captive. Just then, as Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent him this message: "Leave that innocent man alone. I suffered through a terrible nightmare about him last night." So, um, it's
Oh,
that's
dang.
you didn't know that. Okay,
I
yeah.
didn't even
So
pick that up,
that
and I just read
and
Matthew like a big doofus.
and no, that's one subtle thing. So that's not, don't, beat yourself up over that one. But I thought we knew more, and apparently in the Gospel of Nicodemus. So um something that I just haven't really processed until recently. I'm going through a whole class in the New Testament, which is, it's a week in, and I'm already like, it's already intense. And I've already gone through like,
Intent City, you think?
Yeah, in Tent City, yes. Going through like the Hellenization that occurred all the way up to Rome. And so like it's like crazy. But I didn't realize how many accounts there are that are not within the Bible. It's crazy. How I didn't process this before. And so I'm assuming, but I think there's more alluding to this dreaming that she was having in other writings. But it's alluding to that. That's why I knew right away. I was like, oh, that's Pilate's wife. And yeah, you're right. It is like this. I think it's odd. I don't know. Maybe this is just like the show, but like that they're like right outside their door. Like that's I don't.
Really? Like you can't find a better place to crucify people? Like
Well,
right in your front
you gotta
yard?
hold the guards accountable, and I guess so. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's so I don't know. I don't know if that what I think about
Yeah.
that one.
And then of
I don't know.
course the symbolism of the snake, you have the snake in the dream, and then what happens, Pontius puts on a little like bicep bracelet, that is what a snake. So just a little connection there between the dream and Pontius once she wakes up. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that either. So, but one thing I'm very curious about, and I meant to look this up yesterday and I did not. Why I'm assuming they had a pretty good idea of this, a historical accuracy, trying to keep up with it. But Pontius Pilate is young in this, like very young, and I envisioned him as just older, and so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how
He is young in the show, for sure.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it. Like, okay, so he's governor of what was he governor of?
Judea?
Yeah, well, that's a large region, so I don't know if that's either way. He's a governor, right? I don't know if like that's a position that you get to without, like being a decorative war hero,
Right.
that kind of
Putting
thing. You know what I
some
mean?
time in.
And he just, I don't know. It's either that or he's born into it, right? And so I would say he's probably, if this is the case, if he's that young, like it doesn't look like a war, or at least it's not. I don't know. I'm a little puzzled at how young he is, and I'm not saying the show got it wrong. I'm just he's young, and so something I want to look up. But yeah, yeah, it's pretty interesting though. This whole scene, I get sets are small, but like the fact that there are 3 men being crucified out his balcony is
like 25 feet away.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. At the same time, like, he's on the balcony. No, this isn't where he would give judgment. I don't know. I don't even know what to think about that whole thing. But regardless, Pontius Pilate is portrayed as a very young person.
Yeah.
And
this scene here in the beginning, he seems very cold and monstrous, right? I mean, the way he completely disregards the act of crucifixion, right? And that kind of changes when we see him later in the episode. Like in his conversation with Atticus, he kind of shows a different side of his humanity, which seems completely opposite to me. But
yeah, no, it is interesting, but it's, I don't know, do they just become numb to it?
Yeah, I would assume,
like
and
he's fulfilling his duty. And when we go to later, it's like, okay, so he doesn't want to just life be all about work and work being his duty and duty being
Right.
crucifying people or at least giving the judgment to crucify them. And
Yeah.
uh,
He does make a point in this that these are like zealots, right? So like direct enemies of Rome. And as we've seen from Simon Z, the zealots
mhm,
are basically like
they're extremists.
terrorists,
No,
right?
they are.
They're
That's
going
exactly
and
what
like
they.
murdering Roman officials and stuff. So
Mhm.
from a Roman's point of view, I mean, that's like, I don't know, protecting yourself, really.
Yeah,
So
it's the whole social structure between Rome and Israel is just or Jewish, Jewish people, I guess you would say, is just it's crazy. It is crazy on how like balanced it is in what Rome accepts from them and what he does and what they don't. And so it's odd. It's not, I guess you're right. It's not that odd to see them, you know, um, giving judgment to extremists that
yeah,
are trying to probably got caught, trying to kill Roman people or
mhm.
any officials or whatever. I don't know. It's I'm not justifying it,
Right,
but
right,
it's
right.
it is.
From his point of view, you could see why he would just
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
not like those were just random Jewish people off the streets.
right.
You know what I mean? So, but
Yeah.
again,
You wanna tackle the Roman scenes since there weren't very many, um,
yeah.
since we're kind of already on Pilate here. The next scene we have Quintus and Gaius, and not not too much to note here. Basically, what happened? Quintus
Well,
is kind of getting on Gaius's back and being like, "Hey, listen, we got to do something about this tent city out there. It's getting rather intense over there, and it's not making me look good. Atticus is about to go tattle on me to Pilate,
right.
so let's go clean things up so I don't look bad if he has to come down here." So he tells him basically like, if you see people living in tents that are in need of repair, tear them down. If you see
Yep.
people selling stuff, shut it down. Like if you see people sick out in the public, arrest them for spreading pestilence, um, like we we don't want to use brute force, but let's like throw the books at these people and get them the heck out of here. Because guess what? They don't have any money, and so that means we can't tax them. So that means I don't want them here. And we continue to see Gaius's character growth, right? He is not really on board with what Quintus is putting down here.
No, and you are. I think you're. I think you're right, man. I just think you're right. I think you're right. I was just thinking about that the whole time as I was watching this. He's just. It's like I don't know. It's crazy. It's watching him. I couldn't help but sorry. I don't want to get all deep right there, but like watching him reminded me of like what you would see in areas like for an example like Nazi Germany, right? You have these nationalists, right, that are kind of abiding by what is happening in their concentration camps. They're doing these horrific things, and you have these people that are just doing it, right? And there's been a lot of research going into this, like how are these people like just doing this, and so like it's crazy to see him in this like Roman culture of like, you know because up to this point we haven't really seen people just being crucified all over the place. And I
Mhm.
mean, honestly, just in the show, but like it's a reality and those types of things are happening. And I think sometimes the show might be probably a little too loose I mean, you hear about these governors and different people in Rome, like kind of just going off and like slaughtering people and taking it, things into their own hands when riots occur or whatever. And so like, it's crazy to see him make this change. Like there's something like in him that is sick to his stomach almost. Like, you know what I mean? There's something that is like in him that's like, I can't just continue doing this. I can't unsee some of these other things that I've been seeing. I can't, like, there's a different way to things, I don't know. It's just crazy to see this, right? Like he looks off, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they're doing really good with the portrayal of Gaius is really all I'm trying to say with this.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
He does. He looks like angry and kind of a little disgusted after Quintus tells him what to do. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with seeing what Jesus has done with the things that Gaius has been present for, hearing the Sermon on the Mount, right? But also like his encounter with Matthew, all the time he spent with Matthew, right? And realizing like, oh, Jewish people are just people just like me. They're just from a different culture. And then we'll see later on in a scene involving Simon Z. Quintus is walking through the tent city, about to, I don't know. I don't think he's about to do what Quintus is asking him to do, but he's out there. Maybe he was, I don't know, but he sees a rope hanging on like a stand of some sort, and he kind of like picks it up, smirks, and starts like tying a knot, right? And he's clearly remembering his conversation with Simon and probably the work he did with Simon on the cistern. And I think that was very important also to see like the realization between a Roman guard and a Jew, Simon. Both of them realize that they're just both people from different backgrounds, right? So I think it's a good combination of Gaius witnessing Jesus and hearing Jesus teach, but also like interacting with that community of people. And he's like, you know what? Maybe what we're doing isn't really that great,
Yeah.
But something is clearly taking effect on Gaius, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah.
Because in that same tent city scene, when he walks in the tent city, he sees 3 examples right off the bat of exactly what Gaius talking about. Like a guy's coughing all over the place, and his fingertips are like gangrened off, like they're black and missing the tips, right? So there's your sick person you could arrest or detain. You have people fixing a tent, right? Trying to repair something which Gaius was told to like tear down, right? And then right around the corner, someone's selling fruit or something. It's like right there, all 3 things he just sees, disregards what he was ordered to do, and then later on, after the rope thing, he helps 2 people move a cooking stand, which catches the person who is trying to move it completely off guard, and she's kind of like frightened, right? Because the Roman soldier approaches her out of nowhere, and he's like, no, I'm just helping, like all's good. And he helps somebody else fix their tent. Like he's doing the exact opposite of what he was told to do and what someone in his position should do, right? So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and it looks like Praetor Quintus is fearful, which I just looked it up, and looks like Praetor is 2 levels behind governor. So, which is weird. So I don't even know. I am just on Wikipedia, but it says that
everything on Wikipedia is 1000% accurate, James.
Correct. But it does say that a man of 39 years could run for praetor, which I only assume means 39 and up.
That would make sense.
But what's weird is that to be governor, upon completing a term as either praetor or consul is the one between praetor and governor. An officer was it sounds like they could become a governor, right? And so I don't know. I'm like puzzled at how young I'm like stuck on this, but like I'm
Pilate, he
puzzled at
just aged so gracefully. He's
Okay.
he's 41 going on 28.
Yeah, well, it sure looks like it. So I don't know. I can't. I'm hung up on that, and so I forgot how puzzled I was yesterday at it. So
Yeah, no, it's like a silly detail, but also when you're watching a show or a movie, or even reading a book, which I don't do much of, but I imagine it would be something similar. But when you see a small detail that just like logistically doesn't make sense, it's like, it kind of takes you out a little bit of
yeah,
the immersion, right, of what
and
you're watching.
and I'm not like arguing. I'm not saying that. I'm very curious to see what drove them to cast Pilate as so young.
Yeah, they probably just like the actor, I'm assuming. His
I don't
charisma or whatever, how he portrayed what they were going for. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
no,
couldn't tell you.
I don't know. It is what it is, but yeah. So it looks like either way, Praetor Quintus seems scared. You know that what he's doing in Capernaum is not good. You
Yeah.
know, like he can't control the little, so he's not going to. I imagine as you're going on, like you're not like content with Praetor. Like you probably want to move up to some extent, you know? And so it's either I don't imagine you stay in one position for a really, really long time. It's either you're doing bad and you're demoted, or you fall on your sword, or you're good and you're moved up. Well, I mean, that's,
Fall on your sword. Yeah, no,
that's,
no, yeah, I get it.
um,
Yeah, and I mean, Quintus doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's satisfied. He seems to be like the guy who's trying to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak.
well, and what he's saying here is that Atticus, our good old friend Atticus, the CIA member, I can't remember what we described him as, FBI, CIA.
Yeah, CIA, I think it was.
Yeah. He is actually on his way to Pilate, and with him and Quintus kind of having this little bit of like um, just not so friendly relationship, I would say.
Yeah.
He's concerned that that Atticus is going to out him, which I imagine that he is under the jurisdiction of Pilate. So yeah,
Which takes us
interesting.
to the next scene of Atticus and Pilate.
Yeah. So yeah, we got Atticus and Pilate. And
Can I
Atticus,
just say, man,
yeah,
Atticus looking so heroic, arriving on that steed in the hooded cloak.
yeah, hooded cloak and the white steed.
Yeah. I love Atticus's character. Like, I know he's not like a
Well,
great
because
character within the story, but like the way he's acted and like written is so good. I love it.
he's a neutral character. I think that's what it is. And it's almost like the way he kind of plays is that like he's loyal to Rome, but like to an extent. Like
Chaotic
he's gained
neutral.
enough. Chaotic neutral. Thank you. Yes, I was looking. I couldn't remember how it is, but like he is. He's like chaotic neutral in his personality. Like he is like he's loyal to Rome, but it's like he's gained a position and authority to kind of function differently. than what a typical Roman soldier say would act. You know what I mean? Like he's gained enough um authority, yeah, to just be different. And so
Yeah.
it's like he doesn't conform to their, like
Hmm.
he's Atticus, not a Roman soldier. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So I have a
But yeah,
question.
yes.
When after he rides up and Pilate
Uh-huh.
greets him and stuff, they go inside the little tent here, which I love how
Mhm.
he Atticus, of course, being the CIA agent that he is, scolds Pilate for basically being like, "Hey, I'm the
You're dumb.
governor out here in hostile lands. Just if you want to come roll up, I'm just out under this tent in the middle of nowhere.
Uh-huh.
Just me, Pilate." Not very conspicuous. But they go in and they make a point to show Atticus washing his hands at the table.
Mhm.
Now we know, like, we just went through a big, like, ritual cleansing thing. But we know through various moments in scripture that, like, hand washing, feet washing, huge thing in the Jewish culture, right?
Yeah.
Like, was that a similar thing in the Roman culture, or is this, or because like he doesn't just come in and it's like it is a wide shot at first, right? Of both of them, the table,
Mhm.
you have horses in the background, and he like dips his hands in the water, but then they like zoom in on the bowl in his hands, right? Are they like making a point here of like maybe some of the Jewish culture is also rubbing off on Atticus, or is that just, am I like looking into it too much?
I personally think you may be looking into it too much. I don't. So, all right, Jewish culture is there's like a very strong like cleanliness towards what they're eating, and that's like
Mhm.
purify, like there's a lot going into it, like
Yeah.
that's where when you see that they're typically not eating with other people is because they have these dietary kind of things that is significant to them and they're not doing this. And so I
Mhm.
think washing is symbolic, in like very symbolic to the Jewish culture. But I don't know if this is like, so, but when, Pilate, not to, when he is up in front of people and he's washing his hands, he washes his hands
Mhm.
of it. I think that is like, symbolically saying like my hands are clean now. I don't I think just because he used that later doesn't mean that this is like one of those moments.
Mhm.
I think dude was just riding a horse forever in a very dusty
Yeah.
environment, and he just kind of, you know, washes his hands. I think you're looking a little too much. Well, I mean, not like rightfully so. I think you're looking into it,
Mhm.
but um, I don't I don't know if
It just
even
seems
if
odd that they would, like,
they did,
show a
yeah,
few second, like, zoom in of just his hands in the bowl
maybe
washing
they're
and then,
just being facetious here,
I got my
and they're
eye
like,
on you, Dallas.
yeah, no, and
Looking
they're
for
like
answers.
trying just be like, all right, here's Pontius Pilate,
Yeah. Later,
which
he will do
maybe
this.
I don't know. Which I guess the first scene you have is he's
Excuse me.
crucifying 3 people, and then now he's washing his hands, which is something that Pilate's known for. So I
Right.
don't like, and the way he symbolically does it. I don't
Yeah. Dallas, just
Yeah.
comment on the episode, let us know. Was
Mhm,
that intentional? You trying to say something here with Atticus? But basically, Atticus is about to tell him about what's going
mhm.
on with Quintus in Capernaum. And then, he this is where Pontius kind of shows that other side of the coin from earlier in the
Mhm.
episode. He says, I don't want to rule over a warring nation in important times. Like, he's like, I like the sea, I like the people, they're poetic, they're complicated, uh, except Caiaphas. Horrible man. Um,
Which
but he says, man, come on, captions, catch up. I just want peace. I want the people to get what they want for Rome to be sated. So it's like kind of the opposite of what we saw at the very beginning of the episode, where he was just like, yo, what time of day is the best time of day to die? We got to get these crucifixions out of the way, man. Come on, don't complain just because it's at like 8 a.m. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that?
I don't know how I feel about that. Well, I mean, he does clearly. He's like, what did he say about Quintus? He's like, if I reprimand him for the way he's acting, then on people, and he referred to. I was trying to look it up in my book I just read about this, but he was, I think, the way there was attention drawn to him because of the way he was
right
governing, and towards the Jewish people, probably being too and typically I think a lot of these would happen, you'd have riots occur, or people kind of gathering too much, not happy with things in the way that kind of transpired. But like, I don't know. I don't know. I have this weird, like, it's weird. And last time I read through with Pilate, just in scripture, it's just so weird. He's such a odd character because, like, you almost like, I think they're actually playing pretty true to him. He's just kind of like, so when they go to crucify later on, he just kind of washes his hands of it and makes like, which kind of falls in line with how he's acting now. Like, he's just doing a duty. He is it's like, whatever kind of transpires there, fine. I just want to kind of get on with my life. I'm not trying to make an impact. It's the kind of perception I get of him. And like, I don't know. Last time I read through and read Pontius Pilate, I just don't. And then the things that I've read about him, like, oh, he's a pretty bad dude, but like, it's just this weird sense of being a bad guy. I don't know how to put words to it. It's really odd. I don't know how to think of. It's like, it's a Judas, like, he obviously clearly does things, but you don't know how to feel about him.
Right. Because there was a person before the terrible thing, right? But yeah, with Pilate, it's interesting because, like, in scripture, right, he essentially is like, look, I don't think you deserve what they want, right? So like, I don't want to do this. So he even tries to do exactly what he says here, where he tries to give the people what they want, right? Or he's like, are you sure? Like, I'll release any prisoner you want. Like, just if you don't do this to Jesus, like, I'll let you have a prisoner. Like, what do you guys want? And we all know what happens. So he does give the people what he wants. And he's like the most the most passive, like, not great person ever. At least that's what the perception kind of is.
And I think even in my head, when I think about it, and because there was that moment when I did that, I was like, or when I read it, and I'm like, I thought about that last time, like, okay, so he's trying to let this innocent man go, and he washes his hands of it. But I don't know, passiveness is, again, to bring this back to, like, for instance, like Nazi Germany, like somebody just being passive and kind of like, well, I'll just kind of
still going with the flow, doing something.
That might be, I don't know, man. That might be, I don't want to say it's worse than somebody that's like, like gun ho, like feel like convicted to murder everyone, but like, and to some extent, like, it's pretty. No, but I mean, seriously,
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
You get these people. Okay, so I mean, they're really, I don't know how many categories you're going to fall into, but you have the people that are like, yes, like, this is what I live for. Like, let's do this, because there are those people, regardless. There's those people that are like this neutral, like, well, I'm just kind of, whatever reasons you can fill out with, they're scared for their life, they're scared for their family, they're kind of just passive doing it. Or the people that probably refused. And I imagine that people that refused to do is probably very small. But like, you want to put him in this category. Like, I think he's in that kind of middle category. Like, it's just like he's just, this is what he does. He's kind of doing it. Like, I don't know. It's really weird. I can't put my hand or put my finger on Pilate.
Yeah.
I try to understand him mentally, and I just can't.
It kind of makes me think of that the lukewarm scripture, right?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Because like that's exactly what Pilate is. He's that lukewarm, like room temperature water. Like you said, he's not on the extremely passionate go-getter side. He's not on the take a stand, put your foot down for what you believe in side. He's just like,
because remember,
whatever.
he didn't have to agree with the crowd.
Yeah.
He could have been like, hey, guess what? I don't care about any of you. I'm the governor. You know, like, I'm releasing him. And so he had that ability to do that. And it's almost like, I would say, actually, even I think what makes it worse is it's a sign of just weakness as a person. And like, and just like, you're not like, you can't even bring yourself to make the hard decision. You know what I mean? Like, that's how, like, and on top of it, like, you're just kind of just letting it happen. I don't know. There's just so much more to that like, it's just, so with all that said, I think they're doing a good job at painting this like kind of passive, like he's checked out of work kind of, and he's already thinking about retirement at age, what, 15, 16 he is right here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So it's this odd,
excuse me,
odd thing, man. I just don't, it's like, because he's clearly evil. You know what I mean? Like, define it how you want to. But there's this, I don't know, man. I don't know.
No, yeah, it makes sense. At the end of the scene, he basically tells Atticus, you know, hey, if this peaceful preacher thing is something to worry about, I trust you'll let me know about it, you know, head back, learn all you can. And I think that's all of the Roman scenes, right?
Well, yeah, because you've described Gaius as he walked through and helped
the intense tent city.
Yes.
Sorry, I'll quit commenting on the horrible episode name sometime.
Okay.
I just don't know when.
Well, I think we've finished about 12% of the episode, and we're about an hour in, so that's on pace.
Progress.
No, so let's go into Simon Z. Let's break into his story.
Yeah, that's probably a.
So the intro, the intro here, what we have is you know, after that introduction of the snake slithering through the camp, in Pilate's wife's dream, we have the disciples all sitting around at camp during the day, and they're all sharpening and preparing weapons.
Yes.
And so, but you have everyone, what is it? Do we have all of them there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have 9 of them there. And 8 of them are basically taking your everyday tools, you know, and creating, well, I should say 7 of them are creating sharp tools. 1 of them is holding a pen, and the other is sharpening an actual dagger.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're all kind of, which is weird. You know, all right, everybody here doing this, I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Except little James.
Philip, I could not think. Philip was the one. Him,
Philip, yeah.
You know, because he's like that passive, you know, hippie that like
Mhm.
would never do anything, not even a mosquito kind of thing. And so like he's sharpening weapons. So I don't know. That was the point. I don't know. They're all just
Yeah.
in agreement with it. Sharpening weapons, preparing because things are getting a little bit more intense
I
just
love
around
what
town. And
Philip's sharpening too.
what is he
Simon's like,
sharpening?
"Are are are you sharpening one of Eden's knives?" And he's like, "Yeah. She gave it to me and said it needed sharpened."
Oh,
He's like he's like, "You just asked her for it?" She's like, "Yeah, she mentioned it hadn't been sharpened in a while."
oh my goodness. So yeah, they're all building, and then there's Simon Z in the corner, with a dagger, and he's confronted by I think Nathaniel. Nathaniel brings it up like, "Hey man, like that seems a little intense. Like,
Yeah.
Big James has an axe right now, but and
Yeah, but your little
Simon
dagger is
Peter
pretty
has
crazy,
a
bro.
very sharp spear, but your dagger." And so that's where he alludes to, and he's like, "Well, I know they're here. They're kind
Yeah.
of they're the zealots are onto him and really just getting
Yeah.
getting close." And so he senses it. Probably have noticed them being followed. Blah blah blah. And so, yeah. So we kind of get that picture. You get the funny scene of Simon Peter trying to show Matthew what to do with his
Yeah,
pen
doing his
if
best
need
John
be.
Wick impression.
Yeah. So,
I do think there's one thing to note here, like,
let's note it.
they they do bring up, like they're like, "Well, obviously, we gotta protect Jesus, right? These crowds are getting out of hand. We don't want anything to happen to him. He's the Messiah, right? Like, he's everything we've been waiting for, we gotta protect that."
Mhm.
But, I believe it was Philip, probably was Philip. Um, he's like, if we did protect Jesus, that woman would have never been healed."
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
like, they have this, like like they do almost every episode, one of those conflicting conversations of like, yeah, of course, protecting Jesus seems like the logical thing to do, right?
Mhm.
Because he's so important and we don't want anything bad to happen to him. But like in doing that, we're then like keeping him away from everyone else, the people he's here to like reach, right?
Yeah, I feel like I have some sympathy for them with like the confusion that they must have. I
Yeah.
mean, it is so ingrained first off that like the Messiah is going to take down Rome, right? That's
Mhm.
just bottom line. So like you're this excitement for like a rebellion and then you have like it growing and like showing passiveness, but then people are getting close and you can't control them, and like how do you protect him and like this, and it's like I can't, it's like this, and then meanwhile Jesus is like, well, if you get slapped in the face, give me your other cheek,
Yeah.
like and so like you're not, you don't even know how to like, I don't know. It's just crazy. I think sometimes we're like, oh, like be a disciple and like, um, just, I think we place this, at least I have like this emphasis, like they're just kind of following and doing that, but like, being just there,
Mhm.
but like it's eh, almost like they shouldn't have these duties of like protecting him or this like, misunderstanding of what it means to follow in those moments. But like I don't know, I try to put myself when I see the crowds coming up and like I don't I don't know, like imagine you're just walking down the street, crowds just are piling up on you everywhere you go. Like it's just a
Yeah.
weird, you know. Um
Yeah, it's weird, man. And like I don't know, I just always go back to like we now have the benefit of hindsight, right? Like this was all
exactly, exactly.
so brand new. Like yeah, of course they had like the Torah, right, in the Old Testament and like the prophecies. But like the prophecies don't describe every like moment of day-to-day life with the Messiah that you're now walking with. You know what I mean? So like And like we've noted, and the show is noted, and like it's noted in scripture, like they had the wrong idea of what the Messiah was going to be. So like this is all so like foreign and brand new to them, even though they like have been anticipating it for so long. The way it's happening is like not what they thought. So it's just like what
Well,
I don't know. I don't know what I would do in that situation. Like, of course I would want to protect Jesus. Like that what they are doing there is completely like a logical thought, but also on the flip side, what they bring up in that conversation too is also completely logical. Like if we protect Jesus, then these people who need to be healed, like the woman, like aren't going to get to him and get their miracle, right? So I don't know. It's interesting.
well, yeah. I mean, a lot of those, you know, those Messiah kind of things that are brought up in Scripture. You had Egyptian. They were under Egyptian rule, and then and then fast forward, you had Babylonian rule under Persian rule, and then kind of Greeks made their way through. Alexander the Great. Making their way through everything, and then now they're under Roman. So it's like the idea is to get away from this oppression that they're under.
Right,
And so
yeah.
like what would you think? Because you're going to be like, all right, well, we're gonna take these Romans down, which actually we allude to later on. I forgot about that. That's what we'll bring that up when we haven't got there yet. I think we're gonna end it all with the crowd, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, but I feel for them, like just the confusion, like it makes. I think that it's easy to look through this at the lens of like of what we know and just look past this idea that there's mass confusion on what they actually should be doing.
Yeah.
It makes sense they're all like humbled or huddled around a circle in the morning with their breakfast, sharpening tools
Yeah.
into weapons. So yeah, but so kind of staying true to this Zealot and Simon Z arc here. Fast forward, we knew that they're after him, and so now we have Simon Z. He's in Tent City, and it's
And
getting
it's getting
real intense. Yes. And so he's sitting there looking like Atticus with his hood up, just kind of
Yeah.
sitting in the middle of the area. And so it's a zealot, and a zealot has come up, and you could tell by the dagger that he has. I can't remember what.
Yeah. They're like
Um,
little sheaths. I don't know if
yeah.
that's what they're called, but they're so cool. They have like the
Well,
little
it's
curl on it. It's very distinguishable
it
from
is, and so
typical.
it's probably their like badge,
Mhm.
that they it's distinctive to their order. And so there he is, zealot right there. And he looks behind him. Maybe I'll run this way. And there's zealot over there. And, so it's north and south. And let's look east and west. And there's two more zealots. So he is pinned.
What
And
you would call cornered.
yes, cornered
He
without a
is
corner.
between a rock and a bunch of daggers.
Yes. So, and now there's an actual interaction, and they're kind of talking, and he's like, well, I'm gonna, the zealot's like, I'm gonna be the last face you ever see. And
Yeah.
so here's where Simon Z is kind of like, well, like, let's think about this for a moment, let's talk. Step into my tent for a
Yeah.
moment and let's discuss this. But so basically he is arguing like, you guys are doing this in the hopes of like a Messiah coming so we can do what everyone thinks the Messiah is going to do and take down Rome. But like, guess what, bro? Like, he's here and it's not what you think. And so, right? I mean, that's essentially what's happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
love his.
you're muted.
Dang it! I was about to clear my throat and then started talking. And thank you for telling me that. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
love his clap back to the "My face will be the last you ever see," where he's like, well, yeah, I suppose you could kill me, but my rabbis will be the face that awaits me in heaven." I'm like,
Mm.
oh, that was a good zinger there, Z. But yeah, he's kind of like coming to terms with what his fate could be here in this moment because he is surrounded by highly trained assassins. But he does like, you know, tell them about Jesus. Like he tries to tell them what made him turn coat, right?
Mhm.
He tells them he's not what we thought. Like he's bet his life on it. Um, yeah, like sure the Roman soldiers are still here and the taxes are still being paid, but
Mhm.
the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and they're not going to see it right here, but he's doing his best to kind of like give him his testimony before they stab him to death. But yeah, he tells him about the healing of his brother, um, and they don't really
He's
seem to
witnessing to
care
him, right? He's
particularly. Yeah.
no, and no, he doesn't. But I also think that just Simon knew what he was getting himself. He like this is like an act of faith, I would say at this
Mhm.
point. And he's like he's already well beyond accepted the outcome that could occur from this. Um because as we're going further, they're kind of going back and forth, and he shows he's like, I don't even have a knife or a dagger or what I mean. Like I didn't bring anything. Like you could
Mhm.
kill me, but like I don't like I don't have anything. Like I'm not gonna fight
Yep.
back. That's what he's saying. He's like, You're gonna stab me and I'll turn the other way so you can stab me again." Like I don't know what to tell you. Like I'm not so I like that confidence and faith that he has going into this, you know?
Yeah.
Because he accepted whether or not, whatever. I guess you would compare this to like an idea of like the same ideas, like your will be done in this, right? I mean, that's what he's essentially doing. He's like, I'm going into this with an act of faith.
Yeah.
I'm going to witness to them, and whatever the outcome is, like it is what it is. Like I'm not going to fight this um yeah.
Yeah. He even says like he kind of like sticks his hand out of his cloak, like you can't see if you're listening to the audio version, but like puts his hands out to the side and like opens up his cloak and shows his little
Mhm. Yeah,
sash thing,
it's empty.
and that's is not holding his dagger like the other um, from the order have. And he even says like, and I've bet my life on this, like telling them exactly what you said. Like, look, man, I don't even have a weapon. Like, um, so yeah, it's really interesting. And while this is going on, Gaius is there, of course. This is happening the same time he's doing the walkthrough of the tent city that we kind of already talked about. Um, But while all this is going on, a crowd is starting to gather in the town
Hmm.
block, like right by the tent city here, and it's because Jesus is there and he's, performing these miracles.
Yep. And that's
Um,
where we'll pick up here in a little bit.
yeah,
Seems like
and we'll
everything
just
kind of culminates at that.
yeah, I was about to say yeah, we'll kind of end Simon Z's story there because
Mhm.
that's kind of the point where it all starts to come together.
Let's jump really quick to the dude breaking in at night. I almost skimmed over this. Like the dude's breaking in, and um he's breaking in at night, and he's like, "Oh no, I didn't, this knife isn't even, I used it to break in. I'm here
Yeah,
because you guys screwed up this town of what town was he from?"
the Decapolis.
Yes.
Uh,
Um
but he does say a specific town trying to get there in the episode. Um, but yeah, he's not. I don't like he's not pleased, but he's not like super angry at Philip and Andrew. He's just like, "Hey, what you guys did, you kind of like kicked the hornet's nest over here. Um, you need to come back." And yeah, this scene's kind of funny.
Well, he's talking about Decapolis being a melting pot with, so it's basically saying it's a Hellenist mainly territory. You know, Hellenist Hellenization occurred there, and then you
It's from
have
Nava.
Jewish people, Seleucids, Romans, Arabians, right? So he's telling all these different cultures that are mixing here, and they came to the town speaking about what you would call, speaking directly to the Jews, and therefore it's also so basically apparently it's starting up like riots. Not riots. I don't know, but like
Yeah,
it's
pretty
stirring
much like
a lot.
yeah, like he went. They their mission was to the Jews, but the Jews that received right talked about it, so
Mm-hmm.
it got out to non-Jewish people, and then that like people became interested that were not Jewish, and that of course uh, made them stop doing the things that they do. Like he gives example about excuse me, like the Greeks not doing something with the Olympians or something, or reading so and so. But basically, what they preached like lit this area on fire. In a good way for Jesus, but for anyone who's not particularly interested in a culture shock revolution that is, the kingdom of heaven, uh, they were not pleased. So they're like, kind of like, they Philip, maybe Judas seems kind of like, sweet. But then they're like, oh, wait, hold on a second. We're not supposed to go back. He only told us to go once. Anyways, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, yeah. I mean, well, he described that the Greeks, even some Greeks, stopped worshiping Olympus gods, right? And so,
I said Olympians.
well, I might have no that Olympians.
Yeah, yeah.
It might have
It
been
wasn't.
Olympian gods, but
It wasn't that 4-year mark, but
So what's interesting is that these areas would, as like kind of hell, Rome is kind of like this, his kind of came about and largely inspired by ancient Greece, right? That's this, they're like a product of that, right? And so
Mhm.
you have all these like this pantheon of gods, and it almost like would grow as like kind of the cultures kind of collided in this, and you would have this larger pantheon, and then so now you have this one thing Jewish stood out between this is that Jewish is the one true God, right? And so as they were kind of getting a larger pantheon of gods, these cultures that as they were kind of like being added to it, they would accept the other pantheon, the rest that were already in the pantheon. So now you have Jewish that is like this one true God, not accepting the rest. And they're also, just kind of the one. And so now I feel like I don't know, I'm trying to think of like why this would stir up. I'm trying to process through this out loud here. I don't know what do you get what he's like getting at here? I mean, there's just,
like
is it just
disrupting the norms of
okay?
the
Yeah, and that's what I
non-Jewish
figured.
people.
Okay, but like, what would he want him to fix?
I don't
Like,
know,
go out and
'cause
say like, hey, you need to go back and say, hey, um, we're not. I don't. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
trying to.
yeah. I think. Well, he says your mission can't be over. It's brother against brother out there. But yeah, I don't know. He just wants them to come back and finish what they started. But like, is this guy somebody who like accepted what they were preaching, or is he like angry at what they were preaching? I couldn't pick that up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Philip
I
and
don't know.
Andrew, they end up heading back with Levander. here. Uh, Beck and I couldn't help but giggle at their nightgowns. Like, I don't know why. They just look so funny having such a serious conversation and various colored, you know, potato sack nightgowns. I loved it.
Yeah, no, which is weird. I guess like, do they have night? I guess they would. Yeah, that would make sense. They do look funny. Judas looks the funniest.
Yeah, because this is like light pink.
It's like salmon colored. He's got it.
Yeah.
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 So, all right. Well, apparently they just disrupted a town, and we'll see if we jump back to that. Let's just jump right into it since it's the next scene. Let's knock out these few, and then we can see if we can get to the Jesus moments in the town, right? So, there's been just this tension between Tamar and Mary Magdalene, being the fact that Tamar wasn't willing to sell her jewelry to fund, for food, right? At earlier on, and said, I think that was probably even last. I don't think even that was this season. Maybe it was. It was pretty far back.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe end of last season, early this season. But regardless, so now we're starting on a conversation, continued with this tension, and Tamar's kind of trying to talk to Mary. Mary's being like, I'm Mary right now, and so so they're going back and forth on this, and so eventually it gets into, we get to learn
the truth comes out. Really,
the truth. Yeah. So they're basically saying, like, she brings up the fact of that Tamar had brought somebody to the house the first time we ever met Tamar in this. Well, this second time, actually. She brought somebody. It's the famous, tearing of the roof, dropping in the paralytic man, and Jesus looks up to her and says, "Your faith is beautiful." And so, Mary Magdalene is looking at this like, what? Like, I was in a bar, possessed. And so, like, my faith was not beautiful. And actually, on top of it, I left for a while and, like, went back to the bar and drank myself into almost a possessive state. And, and like, and so, like, you trying to compare, like, who is like, I don't know, who's almost more deserving of their role. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, and then that's where, when we get into Tamar talking about her jewelry, so you get a glimpse into Tamar's past. And so so is she from Ethiopia? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So she is like, I'm from a war torn country, so like I have a lot of issues. So she brings this off, her necklace off, she takes it off, and she's like, well, what do you see here? What do you see between the beads? And so she's looking further. I don't know. And she looks further, and she's like, okay, well, that's blood. That's dry blood on this, on these beads. And so Tamar goes into the story about how her and her brother were sent off for family business to kind of do, conduct some business outside of town. And they come back, and while they were when they returned, they had found that an outside tribe had come in and slaughtered the entire village, including her mother and father. So, and so that necklace that blood on there was actually her mother's blood from being slaughtered by a rival tribe. And so, so now you kind of get this idea of, like, which, I mean, to some extent, like, when she kind of, I don't know, I guess you wouldn't assume that. That's not something you would assume. So, I mean, it's clearly, like, I don't know, something like that is clearly a family heirloom. You know what I mean? And so I don't I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to think of like, would that be considered idolatry to have something like that that's carried down from century to century? I don't know. I don't think so because you have, I don't know.
I don't think so, because it's not like she's
Worshiping it. Yeah.
worshiping this necklace, right? But I
Well,
think like
you can prescribe meaning to it.
yeah,
That's means more to you than,
that's true.
I don't know.
That is true. That's still a good point because she's still, even after this conversation, clearly attached to it. But
Almost like she puts more meaning to this than, well, than like her memories of her parents, right? And it's like this is
yeah,
I don't know though. I mean, I don't, and I say this in the terms of like we all have things like this. I mean, if you look at anyone's, there's always, I'm assuming there's something somebody has that is comparable to this type, not in extreme, in the extreme sense of like there's a necklace that your mother's blood is on. What I'm saying is like there's something that like I
yeah,
have a my grandmother was like 10, it was a weird thing, it was like 10 years after she died, my aunt came up with gifts for Christmas, and she's like, here's these little like gold coins that your grandma got and had them given to you like 10 years later or something weird. It's like, but like it's like, so I have that little thing that I have for my and but
mhm.
like, so I'm sure everyone has something little like that, and it's like, do we keep it because is it I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's okay to have like meaningful things, right? But it's teetering the line of like not making that the most important thing in your life,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
But
but it is interesting. We get her backstory, which we've been
yeah.
wondering. Mary and Tamar finally like address this tension,
Mhm.
and I think it's um really the crux of the issue here is the issue of like your attitude in your walk, I think, right? Because Mary's kind of jealous of Tamar for um her like confident approach to
Mhm.
Jesus and this ministry and in this group. She's jealous that Jesus applauded her beautiful faith, her boldness to like push through the crowd and like rip off a roof to lower somebody in, right? Um, and she walks in that boldness and like confidence, right, as a person in her walk here
Mhm.
with the group. And then on the flip side, Mary is, well, we've seen in the past, she's still kind of ashamed of her past. She approaches it with like I don't know the appropriate word. Um
It's like she has imposter syndrome.
yeah.
Like she can't should it's like she can't, like, even now she's kinda, I would say, I don't wanna say proven herself, but like she's come back from where she was, right?
Mhm.
And now it's like she can't really even walk in that yet because it's like she doesn't think she is rightfully doing it. You know what I mean? Like it's like this imposter syndrome. That's the only thing I can
Yeah.
think of with
Well,
her.
it's like she, even though Jesus redeemed her, right? She still lives with that, like the weight of her past, and like she doesn't she I don't know how to like
Cautiously,
I don't know how to get this thought out of my brain, but like
cautiously,
yeah, but she's not like living in sin anymore, but she's almost like has
she's
the attitude and approach that she still is living in sin, even though Jesus or living within her oppression or living within whatever she was living in prior to the redemption that Jesus gave her, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like you have Tamar that's walking in confidence and boldness, living her life as the redeemed, like new person that she is with Jesus. Like Mary is new and was saved and was redeemed, but she still like is kind of like living in that headspace of like, ah man, I
You know
was
what
this and
though?
this was so tough and like it was hard and like it was with me for so long and I was kind of like a crappy person. Does that make sense? I don't know
It
if I'm like
does,
properly getting it
but
out of my head.
so I would say though that um I think she's actually quite wise in what she's doing. And so I had a friend that was in AA, right? And I went to a bunch of meetings with this person and just to kind of support them and so I watched a lot of this stuff and it was interesting because like one of the things they kind of tell you is like you're not cured. Like you're not. Like this isn't like this thing where you're just like okay, now I'm not an alcoholic anymore. No, like you're an alcoholic. Like if it's 5 years, if it's 5 months, if it's 15 years, if it's 30, you're an alcoholic, right? And like you have to be cautious about what you do. And so you don't go, you know, you don't go just walk into a bar, and like start sitting down and like think you're going to get a Sprite. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and so I think she's being wise in the fact that she understands like at any point like she could slip up, she could, and she's like so I think it's like she's teeter-tottering in this balance of like understanding,
Hmm.
you know um understanding how easy it is for somebody to slip into that,
Yeah.
and then how it could um but also like into who she is. So maybe she just isn't there yet. I don't know. It is right. So I
Yeah.
agree with you, but I also like want to add what I just said.
Yeah.
You know
I
what I mean?
think,
Like
yeah, my only rebuttal to that would be without Jesus, that would be totally wise and like totally the right thing to do. But it brings up the question of like,
but she's got but us, we would have the Holy Spirit, right? Isn't that what you would answer that with?
yeah, but she at this time has Jesus.
You
Like,
don't
I mean, I
you
know
have the bridegroom with
they're
you.
like different, but they're like the same. You know what I mean? Like, um, but like,
You don't
yeah,
fast when he's with them, but you do fast when you have the
right.
the Holy Spirit, right? I know I get what you're
Yeah,
saying. I
it's
see
like
what you're
it brings up that thing, like even today, like something that I think of, and what this made me think of.
Are you about to cry or
Yeah. Oh god. No, of course, this would be a great time to just get a random dry throat right in the middle of making a point. And I drank all my water. Um, but this is something I thought of the last couple days, like last couple weeks. It's been uncharacteristically warm in Northeast Ohio, like
Mhm.
40s, upper 30s, and dry. So I've been taking my lunch break. I work from home, walking around the neighborhood. I was thinking about this today because it was warm and dry. Um, it's like when when we are saved and redeemed through Jesus. Again, man, I'm struggling with like how to get these thoughts out of my mind. Like,
It's because it's
are
11 o'clock at night. That's
are
why.
we true? The sad thing is, this is when I'm most awake. It's just one thing I struggle with is just the transfer from brain to mouth.
That's
Like,
fine.
uh, but so like, are we really truly walking in faith and walking in what Jesus has called us to if we are still holding on to the thing that he has freed us from? Like, are we truly free if we're holding on to it still? And in her case, and like your example, alcoholism, like that's a disease and that's like an addiction, and that's like a very tough thing. And like you said, um, your your friend was told that like you're not cured, but Jesus like breaks those chains, right? And delivers us from bondages like addiction. Um, I've never struggled with alcohol, so I could be speaking completely out of turn here. And I'm not saying this in any sort of like condemnation or anything, but like if we truly are accepting the freedom that Jesus is granting us, like we have to walk in that, right? Now I'm not saying like if your sin was heroin addiction, like yeah, like you don't want to go to like your drug dealer's house and hang out, right? That's just putting yourself in a bad situation. So I agree with what you're saying there. But to live in the mindset of like, and this is hard for me to say because I've had addictions for decades that I literally just now am like breaking free from. I'm talking like within the last couple months. So while it's not like specific to her example, like I can relate. And this was the revelation I had on my walk and what the scene made me think of. Like I wasn't really walking in the freedom that I was granted, right? So I would continue to slip up because I would fall for it. I wouldn't like continue to renew my mind and be like, you know what? No, like I don't need that. Jesus has freed me from this. So like I need to live in that freedom. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just had to get it out. Like obviously you want to do wise things, like use your brain, but like I think it's a shift of your mind too. Like you have to not like wallow in where you came from and try your best to like move into that mindset of no, like Jesus like paid my debt in this area, like because of my accepting him, right? And me dedicating my life to him, like that chain was broken. Like I don't have to let that rule me. I don't know if like I'm sorry if that like stepped on toes or like if any listener out there is like, Mike, you're an idiot. But I don't know, I just feel like I had to say it. It was something that was like weighing on me today and while we were talking about this.
Well, no, I get what you're saying, and so like she clearly has addiction, right?
Yeah.
I mean that's like I brought up the alcoholism because I think like it correlates very well here into
Yeah,
her
for
having
sure.
some sort of addiction, right? So I think there's this level of like she can either walk in this like restored person confidently, or she could be um reserved, right? And which is the path she kind of chose. She's walking in this like this, you know. And I think both, whether you're walking in the confident one or this stage, right? You're going to most likely slip up somewhere, right? Or at least like have a mind, you know, you're not perfect, which is what she did before, right? So like I don't know. I mean, I think she's just being overly cautious because she understands the potential to spiral. And I don't know, like I don't know which is good because I feel like both are both are bad. Like, you know, if you get overconfident, what happens when you're overconfident, right? Like you tend to misjudge your actual position or your own abilities, right? And so I don't know. I don't know. I think what I like about this is because she seems like she understands that she could slip up at any given moment, and that, you know, whatever she's just trying to take it I don't know. It's
Yeah.
it is I thought a lot about this scene though, because it is there's this tension between like what you had described, like do you walk in this like faith, like now in the fact of like you're never gonna screw up again in this? And I don't think that's right, because I don't think that, I mean, it's an addiction is that because it's like it's addicting, right? Like
Yeah.
it's um I think it releases like I think typically these types of things are like dopamine is what's really, and so like it's 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 the chemicals in your brain too that are responding to these, and so
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like,
But like, is Jesus bigger than chemicals? Like, where do we put
well,
Jesus in this equation? Like, is addiction greater than Jesus?
well, I yes, but that's assuming that you're walking with him,
Right. Right.
right? Like I get what you're saying. Like Jesus is, they're with Jesus, but like, is he in this room right with them right there? Like, you know what I mean? He's not.
Mhm.
He's actually off doing his thing,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
so
Yeah.
like, and so like I get what you're saying there, and I do agree with that. But like, it's what you're even proving there is that it's a constant like walk in this like renewal.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's a constant state of mind. But as we just said, if an addiction is the release of chemicals that are stimulating these what they're doing, then clearly in those moments you're not walking
Right. Right.
alongside him. So it's like
Yeah.
it's it. So I agree with what you're saying. I don't think it's enough to stop people from, does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
it
I mean,
really
people
takes
slip.
you,
Yeah.
they do, but it takes you to like fight for that, right? Like
Mhm.
if you have something so much that's so intense that you're calling it an addiction, then it takes you to fight that addiction continuously. and
Mhm.
and, and whatever that is, you call it. Okay, so I'm walking with him, right? I don't know, whatever you want to call that, whether it's continuously in the word, whether it's worship, whether it's whatever, like you're walking with this to fight off these things that are addicting, and you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
So it is like I agree with it. It's just very I don't know. We never thought about the theology of addiction. I never really, I don't know,
Right.
but
Um, the one thing that I think is kind of the trigger here is, sorry, I was like mid hiccup there. Mary, of course, she says, I'm broken. We all are,
mhm,
obviously. If we didn't think that we were broken, we wouldn't have a need for Jesus, right? But the one thing she says is that I'm waiting for the caption to say it like exactly what she said. It's coming, it's here. I'm afraid I'm still broken. Of course, we all are. And I worry I will never be enough, which I
okay,
think that is the
that's all right.
that's
You're
the
right. Okay,
point where you're like, yeah, we like,
but
don't get
she's
me
just
wrong, like we suck. Like in comparison of what, we ought to be and what we're, you know, expected to be. Um yeah, like we aren't worthy, honestly. But like when Jesus tells you you are worthy, like even though you realize that you're broken and that you need him, you still have to live
yeah.
knowing that you are worthy of him and his love, right?
But yes, you're right there. Worthy and enough seem to be the two words that are interchangeable in her mind there. And so, but they're not actually, right? Worthy, it's like that scene with the tent when they were early on, she's like,
Mhm.
I can't do it. And he's like, do what? Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
Right.
What do you need to
Yeah.
do? Like, you don't have to do anything. Like, you're good. And so here she's saying, like, I'm not enough. And you're right, you're not enough
Yeah.
to do like what he's doing. like what he's going to ultimately do, or what he has done to this point to get that. Like, you're right, but like, you're worthy of what he's doing it for, right? You know what I mean? So like, you're right. And if whatever expectations or level of however you define the word enough, you may be right. You're not enough. I mean, to your own expectations of what enough is, right? You are enough in his eyes. So like, it is clearly her lack of understanding is what I'm getting at. She clearly is still missing the point.
Yeah. And on the flip side, like, of course, Jesus talks an awful lot about living in humility. So while I was saying, of course, we want to live boldly, we want to live confidently in our faith, you can't cross that line of leaving the humility realm, right, that we're supposed to like live in. So that in and of itself, like a lot of things, is kind of one of those paradox
if
things.
you lack humility, are you prideful? You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting. I honestly didn't expect to have that much of a conversation about this like little 5-minute scene here.
No, I thought it was good though. I thought, we clearly both thought a lot about that scene, and so
yeah. And like non-theology wise, we have some stuff here, some progression of the Olive Grove arc, right?
Oh yeah,
They're still trying to figure out how to fix this olive problem. They go to the vineyard and learn how to make the soil fertile.
Yep. And they're like, oh, it's not that, it's the soil. Duh.
Yeah.
And so now they're correcting the soil, right? So that's it with them. So yeah, we turned that into a 45-minute segment. And so now we're
so we have like what, two more arcs to get through.
Like so many more.
One being Peter and Eden, and then one being the rest of the Jesus arc. So let's just fast forward through Peter and Eden. Peter finally finds out what's wrong with Eden, what the tension's about. It's actually like kind of, I mean, obviously a super relatable scene. Me and my wife like joked about it, where I'm like, yeah, like how is Peter supposed to know? Like he literally cannot read minds. And then we went back and forth a little bit. But essentially it was like a really like heartbreaking, like tense scene. This was the scene that I was talking about actually being tense for me. Was their conversation where she finally tells him, and then he like has to wrestle with that grief, and then they're like trying to figure out how to like grieve together, but they're still obviously kind of have some tension between them. So
my wife and I were like, oh, that's how we fight.
Exactly. That's what me and Beck were going back and forth about. Yeah.
There.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Very relatable scene, but it was good and it was intense.
It was intense. Well, and it's
oddly enough, they were not in Tent City though.
No. My goodness.
Sorry, right, I had to get another one.
All right, I think I'm going to go through the trouble of deleting that from my podcast. Just joking, but no, it was intense. It was it's sad too.
Yeah, it is.
It's just that whole arc and so, but which, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, there's, I think even up to like the 18th, 19th century, like the mortality rate for children was like extremely high,
Oh yeah,
so
I can imagine.
Like I think that's, this is another example of one of those things that, I mean, what was it? The 20th century. I think it was, I can't remember. I think it was the 1900s, right? We still had no idea. We didn't understand about bacteria. I'm sure I don't know if you've heard about this, but what they would do is they were like in this hospital and they were like, I just don't understand why they were having so many infant deaths during birth. And so this was before sterilization. So the doctors would be in the morgue doing dissecting, and they wouldn't clean, and they would go over and give birth to. I'm not. This is legit.
Oh,
Like this is, and so they're giving birth, or help delivering babies,
yeah.
and they're wondering why all these children are dying, these babies,
Huh.
and this is before they really understood the bacterial
Yeah.
growth before them. But but isn't that crazy?
What could go wrong?
That was the 20th
So
century.
crazy. That is
20th
so crazy.
century. Think about it. Like,
yeah, we were punching holes in
pretty
the
sure
ground to extract oil, which, by the way, that's my job. That's the only reason I know
we
that.
still do that.
Yeah, but I mean, like we figured out how to like drill holes into the ground and get this black goo out to make cars go, but we couldn't understand that like touching dead people and then going and delivering a baby was probably not a great idea.
But the idea of like that wasn't, I mean, we didn't really get, I mean, we didn't even really understand molecules, for example, weren't a thing that we knew yet in the early 1900s. Like you had Einstein, who worked on like things like Brownian motion, like the vibration of these molecules and stuff, and it's still theoretical, right? There wasn't, so we still didn't even understand molecules yet alone bacteria, and the whole area. And so yeah, it's crazy though. I remember first hearing that I think I learned in like beginning of biology or something, but I was like, what in the world? Like, and it shows you how recent that was. Yeah. All this to the point is that like this is 2,000 years ago. Like if it was bad then or during the time that 1800s, it was probably even worse around this. So it's again, the whole point of what I was trying to get to is that they bring this element to the show of things that like are realistic of that era. And what was the other? There was another thing that like it just made sense of. I don't know. There's something else in the show I thought that like made sense of. I don't know. I don't want to derail this, but it's like something that's occurring. Like, is this realistically happen in this with Peter? Probably not, but like it's
realistically happened to some other guy.
We talked about it last time too. Like it's, somebody that something like this occurred. Like, unfortunately, that's just how common it is even now, even with mortality rates much lower than this. So it's interesting how they kind of factor these types of things into these characters, because it makes it real. Like this is what the point of the show is, not just to have another thing where you go through the story of Jesus. It's to gain context, gain understanding of what it was actually like during that time and what the disciples might be experiencing. So I don't want to put the words in that I enjoyed this, but I respected what they did here. You know what I mean?
I would understand what you meant if you said you enjoyed it.
Well, sometimes, you gotta.
Yeah. I get you. So that happens, and it's intense and good. And we're the main story picks back up here, the main Jesus arc here.
Yeah.
Two disciples from John the Baptizer come to Big James and John. I almost said Big John again. Big James and John, they go to Peter's house, of course, and the first scene with him and eating dinner. And they want to ask Jesus a question.
Yep.
And then what happens from there, sir?
Yeah. So they're like, well, Jesus isn't here. So,
surprise.
And no, I think at that point,
excuse me.
Peter, he knows the question. He has him. I don't know. I think, what did he have him whisper it or something? I can't remember. Or he knows what the question is. He's like, yeah, no, I think that's a good question to ask him. And so, next thing that occurs is, crowds are kind of funneling away, going towards the city. There's a little something happening, right? It's the busyness.
A ruckus
It's
happening
bustling.
out there. Yeah.
And so so it's Jesus, clearly. And so they're all going back to town, and
Spoiler
it's
alert.
spoiler alert. So they go there, and this is what was in the scene here. This whole thing that's happening here was what described in the beginning of the show. Mark.
Luke,
What Mark?
Mark.
Oh, Mark. Yeah, they said it was.
7:31 through 37.
Look at that, Mark 7:31.
I only know because it's still pulled up on my Bible app.
Yeah. So basically, which is titled Jesus Heals a Deaf Man. And so that's where we pick up in this scene, a crowd around. They're in a little sector of Capernaum here, actually in Tent City, actually. So
yeah, the whole gang. It's like a family reunion. We have the disciples coming, meeting up here. Jesus, of course, in the middle of the crowd. Like you said, it's in Tent City, so Simon and his assassins are just kind of like hanging out, watching what's going on together. So they're
going, yep.
Gaius is there. Barnaby is there, which, if you remember, he's friend of Mary Magdalene, who's been in a few episodes here and there. Even Yusuf and Jairus, they pop in. Mm-hmm. The rabbi from last week's episode is there and angry, obviously, and offended by everything.
Well, because he hired the whalers, and he's the one that hired the whalers. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And Gaius is there, obviously, because he was in Tent City. Mm-hmm. So Jesus is there performing all the miracles. And then lastly, a mute comes. He's got like the chalkboard around his neck. And of course, Jesus heals him. And it's awesome. And he can talk. And just like in Mark, I'll just read Mark since it's right here. Jesus led him away from the crowds. Wait, hold on. Jesus left Tyre and went up to Sidon before going back to the Sea of Galilee and the region of the 10 towns. A deaf man with a speech impediment was brought to him, and people begged Jesus to lay hands on the man to heal him. Jesus led him away from the crowd so they could be alone. He put his fingers in the man's ears, then spitting on his own fingers, he touched the man's tongue. Gross. Looking up to heaven, he sighed and said, do you know how to say that?
Ephatha.
Which means be opened. Instantly, the man could hear perfectly, and his tongue was freed, so he could speak plainly. Jesus told the crowd not to tell anyone, but the more he told them not to, the more they spread the news. They were completely amazed and said again and again, everything he does is wonderful. He even makes the deaf to hear and gives speech to those who cannot speak. Mm-hmm. Thank you for reading that word for me. But it was cool. It was cool seeing him, like, just talking about the miracle that they perform here in the show. Of course, the disciples of John the Baptizer are there too. They were led there by Peter, so like everyone's here. But when he starts to speak, like, he obviously still has that impediment and is like slowly like regaining being able to talk. And by the end, he's like, "Oh, like Son of Man, like King of the Universe." Like it was really cool. I like that a lot. But then Jesus goes into his chat, which I think is also in, like, I'm sure it's in Mark, but I'm pretty sure I read it in Matthew and Luke too. Or maybe I'm misremembering, but basically the talk about John's disciples asking him on behalf of John, like, is Jesus really the Messiah, or should we be looking for someone else? And I love how they do this in the show, because like the disciples like, "Are you sure you want me to ask you this, like, in front of all these people?"
Well, but that's because it's like, I think it's easy to make light of it, like, oh, he's just saying like blah blah blah, but like this is like it's one of the big reasons why he's
yeah, I mean, he almost got thrown off a cliff in Nazareth or wherever. I believe it was Nazareth, right? In episode 3 or whatever. when he said he was the Son of Man in the temple. So obviously that's a pretty big claim to make, especially in front of a giant crowd of people, including some Pharisees. But we get that, and then we get into the scripture of like, when you guys went out to see John the Baptist, did you guys go out to see a prophet or just like reed to be blown in the wind or whatever? I forget exactly. I'm probably doing a terrible job paraphrasing. But it was cool to see those acted out. What did you think of that?
With the what? I'm sorry.
The conversation we get into, he goes into like after they ask him if he's the one.
Yeah.
And all that, he goes into a thing like saying like all the things that he's done, all this stuff, and then I'm trying to find it in here. All right, so he said, "Did my response to the baptizer's disciples sound to any of you like a rebuke?" Of course, Nathaniel right away is like, "Yes." Says, "Many of you are baptized with John. I myself was baptized by him. You heard how strong he was, how passionately he believed, and yet now, even he has questions. When you went to the wilderness to see him, did you expect to see a reed shaken by the wind? Someone in fine clothing like those in king's courts," as he jeers at the rabbi, "or did you go to see a prophet?" They answer, "A prophet." He says, "A prophet, yes. And I tell you, John is who Isaiah and Malachi spoke of. The messenger they sent before who will prepare the way for you." And he goes on to say, like, anyone born of women, no one is greater than John the Baptizer, but like, I'm the Messiah. Basically, he was here to prepare the way for me. That's what he's getting at. But it's I don't have the exact like verse reference, but it's in Luke or Matthew. It's this conversation. Yeah, I don't know. What'd you think of this scene here in the tent city?
I mean, I mean, it's good. It's that contention, conflict, this between him and this. What is that Pharisee's name? I'm glad we don't see our boy Shmuel anymore.
I know we haven't had a PVU in a while, which is nice.
But I just, yeah, he's even clearly. I mean, even Gaius kind of looked up because they were like, "So, where are you going to launch your revolution to overthrow Rome?" And Gaius is like,
he's like, "What?
What?" I thought we were. I didn't know this is what we were.
Yeah, I thought you were the peaceful preacher.
So, it's what I think too is like right now. I feel like he spent. We see him in Capernaum so much that I feel like even the Pharisees that are around like has grown accustomed to this. Like I think I think we start to see it become like more heated when they're in the temple. Because the temple is it's
It's one thing to say this like out in Tent City, but you go in the temple and you say that.
Yeah, but that's where, because this is the second temple too. The first one was destroyed. You know what I mean? Like it was already destroyed and rebuilt and so like, there's a lot of strife there. Like there's a lot of animosity towards people that are, like when you're stirring in the temple, like when you're stirring these crowds and stuff, like, it becomes fearful for these Pharisees and these different, like that the temple is going to be, they're very protective of the temple. Actually, I just learned this in the temple. You know how there's like different sections, and the farther you go, you get to the Holy of the Holies, right? And at that point, like the high priest is only one that allows to do that or allowed to get to there. And that's actually even only once a year for atonement. And so, but there is a point at which, like from the outside gate to like the center, there's a sign basically saying like Gentiles are not allowed in here, and it's like punishable by death. To even like step foot in that area. So they're very like, so I'm very, I seeing this, it's almost become this natural of like, I'm the Son of Man, I'm the Messiah, I'm out here, like, let's do it. Like, it's just very, everyone's just kind of like, okay, like he hasn't ripped, you didn't see the Pharisee rip his shirt, no blasphemy and scream that.
Yeah.
But like, I can understand why tensions are going to start. We're going to start seeing that as we get closer to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Because
I love it.
That was my notice. It just became very. It's just become this. It's just natural at this point. There's no like sure the guy's yelling and back, but like not really. I mean, it's not like danger.
Right, and I love it. He says like I don't remember exactly how he said, but he's like, yeah, don't waste the time you have right now to hear the truth. Like the kingdom of heaven is here, and so many people in this generation are missing it. Like, don't miss it, which was really cool.
Yeah, no, that was the one part that hit it, and that might be from scripture. I don't know, but I loved that. I'm trying to find what he exactly says, but he's talking to the Pharisee, and he's like, what did he say? Darn it.
It's something about being offended, and he's like, I am offended by anyone who blasphemes or whatever.
Yeah, but he specifically looks at him, and he's like, you missed it then.
Oh yeah, don't miss it now. Yeah.
Like you're doing it both. Like you choose not to see this. Like this, there's nothing that's going to. And I will say that's very. I feel like that's very common. I mean, and I understand there's a lot of conflict between people. Like we'll just take the simplistic thing of like, here's an atheist, here's a Christian, right? There's conflict, and if no one can even like open up to even have a conversation between the two, like you just don't even try, because you're never going to agree upon some central premise that you can build a conversation on, and that person's not going to hear you, and they're going to intentionally not hear you. And the Christian, it's like, what I mean? It's like there's this balance. And what he's saying is like, there is nothing I could have said, could say now or say in the future that's going to change this. Like you are going to miss it regardless. The way your mind is at this, the way you're kind of viewing this, right? Does that make sense? And so, and I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with people, and it just seems like that seems to be, it. I don't know, like if you, which is, I don't know, sad sometimes, because it's like if you can't even, even now as a Christian, like I'll think about all, like I'm not just like centered on my point, and I have to get this point. I'm still open minded toward other things, not to be swayed there necessarily, but like. I mean, I would have never got to be a Christian if I wasn't open-minded in the first place. So, and I respect that, and I respect that with others. So like, I'm going to at least follow him down that rabbit hole. I'll at least give him that. Does that make sense?
Well, it's hard. Like you said a couple minutes ago, hard to have a conversation if you can't.
Yeah. Like if I'm going into a conversation with somebody that's maybe atheistic, and they're like, and me, like, I'm just starting that conversation. Like, no, God, it's like, I rewatched all the Ken Ham debates. I don't know if you're familiar with those, Ken Ham and Bill Nye.
Yeah.
And like, it's not even a conversation. Like, I don't know. I actually just read both of their books. I read Bill Nye's book called Undeniable, and I read Ken Ham's book on the creation. I gave Ken Ham's book a 1 star. 1 star. It was very poorly. I actually gave Bill Nye's book 4 stars out of 5. We're not on a 7-star system.
You didn't go to the scroll.
No, but and mainly due to the point that it was literally like you can't just respond to people like that, and it's like the Bible. It's like, well, that's not, and that's not the answer. I don't know. Basically, the point is like you can't. He went into
Like
this.
they're not gonna understand or want to accept that. Like you have to
Yeah,
have more to build upon
yeah,
and
yeah,
eventually like get to that point. But
yeah.
yeah, I totally see what I understand exactly what you're
Well,
saying.
they were like arguing evolution, and the whole time Ken Am's like, well, just the Bible, and it's like, well, that's not like
Yeah,
you're not
clearly
saying
he doesn't believe in that. So like say
that you're
something else.
like it's not going to like that's great that you're like,
Yeah.
but like this isn't. You're not arguing the point. You're just saying things that
Yeah, yeah.
you're convicted. Yeah, it just wasn't good. But
Yeah.
I think this is the point here. Though, so that they're always going to miss it, and there's nothing that, and so, which is, I don't know. It seems to be, I don't know. I mean, true. I don't know. Like, what did you like that scene? Like, is you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I like it. You get a lot of good snippets of scripture in this one. Like later on he goes on to say, John was here and like he fasted and like went out in the wilderness and you guys said he was demon possessed. And I'm here and I'm eating and drinking and dancing and you call me like a
Oh,
drunkard. Like
yeah. Oh, yes. That's what it is.
and I
Yep.
think that's exactly like what you're talking about.
No,
Like
that is what it. Yep.
you're not you guys just don't get it. Like
You're.
you're not gonna get it.
I mean, but that's just even like a basic philosophy to live by. Like, why is anyone so stuck in their ways and thinking so much into something that
mhm.
that you can't even conversate about
Yeah.
something? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, for sure.
that's not good.
No, no, it's
And
not.
and I see you clearly see Jesus, like he doesn't, I think there's a distinct difference is like he doesn't go collect taxes with Matthew. He wasn't that, but like he goes and sits down and has a meal with
Yeah.
him, which actually, again, with this purity thing and what they're putting into their mouths, like is actually even more to that culture is actually even
Shocking.
more shocking that he
Mhm.
actually sat down to eat. That like, somebody that of Jesus' stature of who he is defining himself to be, right? Of who he says he is, right? And he's going down and actually eating food that
Right.
is
It's like
now
it's
going
like
to be
their
defined like
sin is contagious by
no,
like
but that's
transfer on food. Yeah, no, but
yeah,
that's
no,
like
it's
what they
so
thought. Like
exactly
yeah.
the way that they would eat. I mean, there's like the food is prepared right, and like
Yeah.
there's just so much that
Mhm.
I don't know. So like it's actually even more shocking, like you said, that they were actually sitting and eating with him rather
Yeah.
than just being with him. So like I'm not saying they should go in and do the things, but like he did meet them where they were at.
Yeah.
And so that's the point that I'm trying to make here. So like you can't meet somebody where they're at if you're not open-mindedly thinking about what they're saying and actually listening and actually have a conversation. I learned a long time ago, like not a long time ago, it's actually like a great conversation. Like when you go to have a conversation with somebody, just shut up. Don't,
Yeah.
I mean, not like don't quit thinking about everything else. Quit
Yeah.
thinking about what you're going to say next. Like listen and
Here,
maybe,
yeah.
you know what I mean? And so like, and I think that's where I've realized I've had these pretty debates with people and stuff, and they're not doing that. And that's, and I've been guilty of that as well. But when you're
Mhm.
doing, it's just not, you're never
Yeah.
going to get it. So
Have
yes.
those formulated responses already ready to fire off at a moment's
But
notice.
right there, that's where the Pharisee right there is clearly ready to just
Mhm.
shout off the next thing. He wasn't listening. And so I
Yep.
think if they listened, they would have potentially heard a little bit more than what they
Yeah.
chose to hear.
And I love it. The scene wraps up with Jairus. By the way, we need to get a Jairus on our podcast because he's like, this is a great conversation, but Rome, Quintus, he's put out this thing where, if more than 25 people are gathered late in the day, and he's like, it looks like yeah, we're right there. We should probably leave because we could get arrested.
You mean we should have a gyrus to stop us from talking about an hour ago? Oh man,
I
yeah.
loved
Well,
it. It was great. It was kind of like comical. But then like Gaius is like sensing the rising tension here. He's like, oh yeah, that man's right. You guys should get out of here. Um, which I thought was pretty cool. I love the fact that like almost every character that had some sort of significant role in season 3, it was kind of like here. We
yeah,
don't have Veronica, or like I don't think Judas was here, but like a large majority of the characters we've seen were kind of here, and that was neat.
well, yeah. And so yeah, at that point, the crowd disperses. Gaius is like, actually, yeah, I agree. What are we doing here? I haven't been listening to this preacher for a
Yeah,
while.
definitely. Don't know what he's
So
talking about at all.
so they disperse, and it jumps to
Simon
the
Z
quick
and
scene.
his
Yeah,
assassins.
and they're like, he's like, well, why don't you like stay? Because they're like they're looking at Simon Z, and they're like, like, you're actually, wow, this is the Messiah. I watched some miracles here. I've seen it from my own eyes. And Simon's like, you could stay, and he's like, no, I need to go report that of your death. And so,
Yeah. The hunt will be called off.
Which in actual, like, I mean, he died to himself of who he was. So I mean, it's kind of, I think the point of that was to be somewhat symbolic, right? And literal at the same point. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, so they disperse. Simon Z's alive. And then here we are with this last little tidbit here is, what is his name again? I'm sorry.
Barnaby and
Barnaby
Shula.
and Shula. So they are
Our
Barnaby.
cripple and blind friends.
Yeah, so Barnaby brings him, brings Shula for healing, and
Because one of the people that was healed at Tent City was a blind boy. So
yep.
Barnaby being there, he's like, oh, my best friend's blind. Let's get her to Jesus.
Yeah. And it's just that, yeah. So and so they go through it, and are you afraid to ask for healing? She's like, yes. And basically like, well, why haven't you asked me for this? It's not like we haven't crossed paths before. Why haven't you asked me? And so
Right.
and it's that typical, like, she doesn't feel worthy of it or whatever, or even in more of a selfless way here, like, she's like, well, you could be devoting your time to other people. Like, she
like,
says it there. She's like, I'm used to this. Like, I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm good. And
like, I'm blind, but like I'm still living like somewhat normal, right? Like, you could probably be doing something more important. Which, like you said, is very selfless, which was really cool. And I loved Barnaby's selflessness in this scene too, because of course he could use healing. He's like a gimp. He's walking around with a cane, but what's his first thought? Not on getting himself healing, but to have his like best friend brought to Jesus and healed, which was super cool. And I think that is what like hit me in the tear ducts, was just like when Jesus is like, hey, Barnaby, you could use some healing too, buddy. And
he's
Barnaby's
like,
like,
no,
oh, no, this isn't about me. This is about her. Like, no, maybe another time or whatever. And that was just like, oh man, that's just like, so selfless. I loved it. And then of course Jesus healed him anyways, which was beautiful. I loved this scene. There isn't like really too much to unpack other than like, I just loved the selflessness of both of them. Putting other people above themselves, which I think is something that like blesses Jesus. Like when we do that today, right? When we live that servant lifestyle. Anyways.
What's interesting too, though, is that I wonder how little James I mean, honestly, like, I don't know, little James kind of brought it up, and Jesus kind of gave him the choice. I guess he did give him the choice. Like, I think he would have healed him right there, right? But you have him that now he heals Barnabas. Did I say that right? Is that
Barnaby?
Yeah. Barnaby.
Yeah. It's probably short for Barnabas. Let's be real.
Barnabas is the singular. Barnaby is the plural. But I wonder how that would be. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah. But yeah, because I was a little concerned about like another like festering brewing resentment. You know, like we have Lil James in that scene. I don't think he's resenting it anymore. Maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe he is. And then of course we have Eden and Peter with their miscarriage,
Yeah,
and Eden was very gloomy at the end of last week's episode, and I was like, oh, we're gonna have Barnaby join the crowd now. But no, we don't. And it was cool. It was beautiful to see. And I think that wraps up
that
the
wraps
episode.
it up. And if it's not, we're just wrapping it. No.
I feel all right. So anyone watching the video, and James, you might be wondering why I've periodically like stood up. My seat for some reason keeps like slowly lowering. I think
Oh no.
maybe it's getting a little old. But like I keep like eventually I'm like this, and I'm like, oh man, I'm like almost completely hidden by my mic. I gotta raise my seat up.
Man.
But anyways, yes. It was a good, this happened one time on Showboys where we were covering a show. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head what it was, but like all three of us were kind of like meh about it. But by the end of the episode, we're like, actually, now that we've talked about it for 2 hours, I like it a lot more.
This might, yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. So now that we've talked about this for probably 2 hours,
this might be our longest episode.
I do think this one was better than we gave it credit for at the beginning.
Well, we discussed that there was that hype for it. So it's like, I thought there was, but in actuality, like it was good, and it sets it up, I think, for some things.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm interested to see. Everyone's been waiting for it, right? The Pontius Pilate being added to it, and some because we spent so much time in Capernaum, and so eventually, like he's gonna spend some time in Jerusalem.
Yep.
Right.
Indeed.
I'm waiting for him to flip some tables, man. So
yeah, I'm excited to see that. I don't know what we're going to get in the last 2 episodes. We do have titles for them, by the way. They are
hopefully better than this one.
What?
Hopefully better than this one.
Oh, anything would be better than this one. Ears to Hear is episode 7, and Sustenance is episode 8. So I'm anxious to see what happens in the last 2 episodes. I'm very anxious to see what we get, what stories we get from the Gospels in future seasons. They've introduced Lazarus, so I feel like they have to go there at some point. But yeah, anything you want to throw out there before we wrap up?
No. Like I think we're good. I don't know what else I would say. I think you've heard me rant enough tonight on all the things, and so no, nothing more. And I figure I could just keep on going and ranting like this and make it another 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm good. Yeah. So basically, anything. How about you? Anything?
Nope. Just go check out showboysmedia.com, check out thenerdybible.com, and see what we got going on over there. Like, rate, review, follow, subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this on. Join our Discords and leave a comment letting us know what you thought of the episode, and any revelations you may have had, or I don't know, interested to hear what you guys thought. So let us know. We look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to getting together again in a couple weeks, talk about episode 7 and 8. So we'll catch you later. Shalom.
Bye.